Welcome, everyone. It's your Sleepy Psychologist, and I'm so glad you're here. Wherever you are right now, take a moment to get comfortable. Maybe you're in bed, maybe you've dimmed the lights, or maybe you're just searching for something a little quieter, something slower, because tonight we're stepping away from the noise and into the strange, soft corners of thought. We'll explore one of the mind's biggest mysteries, something that might shift the way you see yourself, the world, or even reality itself. Before we begin, consider liking this video and maybe even subscribing, not just for me, but so this little corner of peace can find others who need it too. Now take a deep breath. Let the day dissolve. Let your thoughts get curious and your mind get quiet. You're exactly where you're meant to be. Now, let's begin. Tonight's quiet journey takes us somewhere unusual, not into history or dreams or distant galaxies, but into the soft flicker of something you carry with you every moment, even when you're not thinking about it. Consciousness, that invisible presence behind your thoughts, the voice you hear, the light behind your eyes, the part of you that says, I am. But what is that exactly? Why does anything feel like anything at all? And how can we be so certain we exist when no one else can step inside our experience? Before we begin, I'd love to know, where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it right now in your little corner of the world? Strange, isn't it? How we're scattered across so many places and hours, and yet somehow we've all arrived here in this one moment together, conscious, curious, quiet. If this exploration brings you peace or helps your mind soften into stillness, I'd be deeply grateful if you like the video, maybe even subscribed. It helps this calm little space reach other restless minds in need of rest, so settle in. Let your thoughts fade, let your breathing slow. And together, let's drift into the first mystery of mind. Not to answer it, but to feel it. You blink and you're here. You don't know how. You didn't choose to begin, but the moment arrives and you're awake. Not just alive, but aware. You feel the weight of the blankets. You notice your breath, the hum of silence, the strange throb of being. And somewhere inside you, like a flicker in a mirror, you realize you're you. That's the mystery. You're not just watching the world, you're experiencing it. There's a voice narrating. There's a sense of self behind your eyes. And even as thoughts float past, even as they twist and loop and argue, there's something deeper underneath it all, something quiet, something watching, something thinking about thinking. It doesn't speak, it just notices. Philosophers called it qualia, the raw feel of being, the redness of red, the warmth of a memory, the way sadness doesn't just happen. It hurts. No one else can touch your experience. No one else can stand in your moment. You might share a room, a laugh, a lifetime, but you'll never truly enter someone else's consciousness. Just like no one will ever see through yours. It's the most ordinary thing in the world. And the strangest. It's brushing your teeth and wondering who's doing the brushing. It's seeing your reflection and recognizing yourself as something more than a face. It's knowing that you know and not knowing how. Your body breathes on its own. Your heart keeps time. But you drift through it all like a ghost in the machine, watching, remembering, wanting, reacting, and somehow believing that all this tangled symphony of senses and thoughts and feelings is you. But who is that? Where does the you begin? The cells in your hand don't know they're part of a self. The neurons in your brain fire without asking permission. You don't control your heartbeat or your hunger, or the way sadness suddenly blooms from nowhere. But still, behind it all, there's awareness, a quiet center, a flickering light, a mirror that thinks. You can close your eyes and still imagine a world. You can feel fear from a memory, joy from a dream, guilt from a thought that never even happened. You live inside a mind that paints entire universes and then forgets they aren't real. It tells you who you are. It reminds you where you've been. It writes the story of your life and convinces you it's true. But who is writing it? And why does it feel like anything to be written at all? Because that's the real puzzle, isn't it? Not just that the brain does what it does, but that it somehow feels like something to be inside it. That's the part no equation explains, the part no scan can show. You could study every neuron, map every synapse, trace every electrical impulse, and still never find where you are hiding. The machinery is visible, the mind is not, and yet without that invisible mind, nothing would matter. Everything would still happen. The rain would fall, the sun would rise, but no one would be there to notice, no one to say, I am. So what is this strange candle flickering behind your eyes, this constant hum of self that never truly sleeps? And if consciousness is just the output of a brain, then why does it ache? Why does it dream? Why does it remember old regrets and imagine futures that don't exist and fear things that never come? What is this fragile illusion that holds together everything you believe to be you? The world around you is made of atoms, of forces and fields, but none of them explain the sound of your name, the sting of goodbye, the sudden memory of laughter that makes your chest warm. Somehow, matter wakes up. Somehow, the dust learns to feel, but no one knows why. No one knows how. And that question, the one that haunts philosophers, neuroscientists, and monks alike, is where our journey begins. Because you might be wondering, how does the brain give rise to this feeling of being alive? Not just functioning, but feeling? What turns electricity into emotion? What turns neurons into a self? And why does any of it hurt or sing or shimmer at all? That question has a name, and it is, perhaps, the strangest problem in all of science. The hard problem. That's what philosopher David Chalmers called it. Not how the brain sees or moves or calculates. Those are the easy problems, the mechanical ones. The hard problem is this: how does brain activity give rise to experience? Why does electrical firing in a lump of flesh feel like love or fear or grief? You can look at a neuron, you can watch it spark, but no matter how long you study it, you won't find the feeling. You'll never see the sorrow, the tingling joy, the gut-pulling ache of longing. And yet it's all there. You're feeling it right now, somewhere between the words and the breath and the silence in between. There is awareness. You can explain how a speaker produces sound, but that doesn't explain music. You can measure the frequency of a wave, but that doesn't explain why it makes your chest swell when the violin enters. That's the split, the divide between what happens and what it feels like, between third-person science and first-person experience. You are a body, yes, a collection of cells and tissues and chemicals, but you are also the one who feels the body, who senses pain not as a number, but as something sharp and personal. The one who doesn't just hear sound, but hears your name in a crowd and turns, who doesn't just see color, but stares at a sunset and feels something you can't explain. And science, for all its brilliance, doesn't know how to explain that. The hard problem isn't a technical one, it's emotional, existential, eerie. It's not about how nerves conduct electricity, but why electricity hurts. It's not about what parts of the brain light up when you fall in love, but why falling in love feels like fire and gravity and hunger all at once. What is that? Where does it come from? Some say we're just mistaken, that consciousness is a trick, that your inner world, your memories, your voice, your pain, is nothing more than the illusion of complex computation. That if we built a machine with enough wires, enough code, it would feel too. But others say no, that something is missing, that there's a gap between function and feeling, and no matter how many brain scans we do, the light behind the eyes still can't be measured. It can only be known from the inside. The way you know you are here, the way you know this moment is yours. The hard problem sits at the center of every theory of mind like a quiet riddle. We can point to which parts of the brain process smell, memory, touch, but we can't point to where the feeling of existence lives. Is it one place, a pattern, a process, or something else entirely? Something not yet discovered, or maybe not even physical. Some theories say consciousness is a byproduct, like steam from an engine. Others say it's the whole point, that without it, the universe might as well be dark and dead. And maybe what makes it hard isn't just that we can't solve it, but that we don't even know what the answer would look like. What would it mean to solve it? What would it feel like to truly understand why there is a you behind the eyes and not just a body going through the motions? Would it change anything? Would it make you less lonely? Would it make death softer or love sharper or fear easier to carry? The hard problem is not just a scientific puzzle, it's a human one. Because if consciousness is just a side effect of the brain, then maybe we are alone. But if it's something more, something fundamental, then maybe awareness is not just a candle in the dark, but the light that lets the dark be seen. And yet the question remains, if we can't find where consciousness lives, then what exactly is creating the world you see? Because every color, every sound, every sensation is made by you. Not just seen or heard, but built from within. The brain doesn't just receive reality, it constructs it. And what you think of as the outside world might just be a reflection inside your mind. So what happens when that mind turns inward and begins to imagine itself? What happens when a system that builds reality starts to build a self? Because in the moment your mind begins to combine sights, sounds, sensations, and emotions into one continuous stream of being, something strange happens. The ingredients of thought blur together. They bind, and suddenly, for reasons no one can fully explain, they feel like you. But how? You see with your eyes, hear with your ears, touch with your skin, and yet all of it somehow arrives in the same place. One moment, one experience, one self. This is the binding problem, and it's stranger than it sounds. Because your brain is not a single unified organ. It's a network, a web. Billions of neurons firing across separate regions, each doing their own task, none of them fully aware of the others. There is no central command, no little pilot watching the screens. And yet everything comes together. Sound and vision, emotion and memory. They arrive in sync, seamless, instant. One reality flowing effortlessly through a single lens, yours, but no one knows how. The brain processes color in one place, shape in another, motion somewhere else entirely, but you don't see scattered fragments. You see a red balloon drifting past a window. You don't think of it in layers. You don't hear music as pitch plus rhythm plus tone. You just feel it, whole, alive, moving through you like water. That unity, that feeling that all of this is happening to you, for you, as you, is still one of neuroscience's greatest puzzles. Because no matter how carefully we map the brain, we haven't found the meeting point. There is no control room, no final neuron where it all comes together. And yet every moment of your life insists that it does. So where is it happening? Some say the binding is an illusion, that what we feel as unity is just a trick of timing, that each sense is slightly off, slightly delayed, and your brain edits the moment afterward to make it feel like it was all simultaneous, like a mental film editor trimming the frames and stitching them together before you notice the seams. Maybe consciousness is not the experience itself, but the memory of it, a playback, a reconstruction. Others think it's not about place, but rhythm. That consciousness isn't a location in the brain, but a wave, a pattern that flows across regions, syncing them into harmony for just long enough to be noticed. They look at brain oscillations like gamma waves and wonder if attention is just a spotlight that moves too fast to see, binding everything it touches into a single coherent moment. Still others believe the brain works like a symphony, with no conductor, but perfect coordination, each region responding to the others, adjusting, adapting, anticipating. And the self, in this view, is the music, not the instruments, not the notes, but the pattern that emerges when everything plays in tune. But maybe the strangest idea of all is that there is no binding, that the feeling of unity, of a self, is a story, a convenient fiction your brain tells to keep you functioning. Maybe you're not a single observer, but a collection of processes that all believe they're you. Maybe there is no center, no one home, just a chorus of systems whispering the same name, and the moment they agree, the moment they sync, you feel like someone, and when they drift, you don't. You felt it before. The moments when you seem to disappear, lost in a task, flowing through music, caught in a memory, you're still there, but quieter, dimmer, like the volume of self has been turned down, or when you're half awake, caught between dream and thought, and everything feels strange and stretched. That's the boundary, the edge of the story, the place where binding phrase and awareness flickers. And yet even in those moments, something remains, a presence, a watcher, a thin thread of continuity that never quite lets go. So maybe the self is not a thing. Maybe it's a process, a rhythm, a temporary alliance of competing thoughts, stitched together by memory and mood and attention. And maybe what you call I is just the feeling of everything syncing up at once. Whatever it is, it's fragile. The slightest disruption, a seizure, a head injury, a chemical imbalance, and the illusion collapses. Memories disappear, identity blurs, emotions short-circuit, the world fractures, and the unity is gone. Consciousness is not solid. It's fluid, malleable, held together not by wires, but by balance, coordination. And whatever this binding process is, it doesn't just combine sights and sounds. It binds you to them. It makes you feel like the center of your experience, like the balloon, the wind, the music, the pain, are all happening to the same person, a person who has a name, story, a history, even if that story is being rewritten in real time. And yet, the moment the binding slips, the moment memory fails or the senses desynchronize, the self begins to dissolve. You are not a thing that exists. You are something that happens, something that holds itself together just long enough to say, "This is me." But what happens when that process breaks? What happens when the story splits in two? What happens when the mind itself is divided? In the mid-20th century, surgeons discovered something strange. To treat severe epilepsy, they began cutting the corpus callosum, the thick bundle of fibers connecting the left and right hemispheres of the brain. It was a last resort, but it worked. The seizures stopped, the patients recovered, and everything seemed fine, until they looked a little closer, because something had changed. Not in the body, but in the mind. Subtle at first, a hesitation, a flicker, a moment of confusion when asked to perform certain tasks. And then the realization the left and right hemispheres, now separated, could operate independently. They weren't just two halves of the same mind, they were two minds, trapped in the same skull. One side could speak, the other could not. One could write, the other could draw. Show one hemisphere a picture of a snowstorm, and it reaches for a shovel. Show the other a chicken foot, and it picks a chicken. Ask why. And the talking half, unaware of the snowstorm, invents a reason. The chicken goes with the foot, it says, calm, confident, completely wrong. The brain had split, but the illusion of self remained. Each hemisphere believed it was whole, each unaware of what the other had seen or felt or chosen. And yet they shared a body, shared eyes, shared memories, sort of. The split brain experiments opened a door into a strange possibility. That consciousness might not be singular. That the unified self we feel so deeply could be a kind of negotiation, a fragile balance between competing perspectives. The left brain, logical, analytical, linguistic, thinks in words. The right brain, visual, spatial, intuitive, thinks in pictures. Normally, they work together, but when separated, each moves on without the other, like twins raised in silence, like roommates who never meet. And this isn't just theory. These patients could draw two different shapes with both hands at once. They could focus on two objects at the same time. They could even disagree, one hand buttoning a shirt, the other unbuttoning it. One hand picking a snack, the other slapping it away. It wasn't just coordination, it was conflict, independent will, a body caught between minds. And if that's possible, if consciousness can split, then what does that say about the you feel right now? Maybe you're not one self. Maybe you're many. A cluster of systems tied together by habit and memory and a name. Maybe the brain is more like a parliament than a king, and the self is just the current ruling coalition, stable for now, but always at risk of falling apart. This idea isn't new. In ancient times, people spoke of spirits and demons, inner voices with their own desires. Today, we call them subpersonalities, ego states, fragments. Even in everyday life, you feel it. The part of you that wants to stay up. The part that says sleep. The one that craves. The one that regrets. The voice that says, I shouldn't. And the voice that does it anyway. Which one is you? All of them? Or none? The split brain shows us something unsettling. That consciousness is not a light switch, on or off, but a tapestry, a collection of processes woven into temporary unity. Cut the threads, and the illusion doesn't vanish. It doubles. One person becomes two minds in one skull. And they don't even know they've split. That's the strangest part. The left hemisphere goes on believing it's the only one home. It creates stories, explains actions, even when it has no idea why they happened. It never suspects there's another will beneath the surface. It doesn't question its own awareness. it just keeps talking. So, what does that mean for you? How sure are you that the thoughts you think are really yours? That the feelings that rise inside you came from oneself, and not a fractured system that only appears whole? Maybe the mind is not a mirror, but a house of mirrors. Maybe it's full of corners you've never turned, voices you've never heard. And maybe the unity you feel is less like a fact and more like a vote. A fragile agreement between parts of you, constantly renegotiated, constantly maintained. Most of the time it holds. But when it breaks, in trauma, in madness, in dreams, we glimpse what lies underneath. Something older, wilder, plural. And yet even then, something remains. A watcher behind the division. A center that isn't a self, but a silence. The space in which all the voices echo. And the question grows heavier. If you can be divided and still feel whole, then what are you really? The self feels like the most obvious thing in the world. You wake up, and there it is. You move your hand, and it listens. You recall a memory, and it feels like yours. But beneath that smooth surface lies something fragile, something stitched together, something that might not be as real as it seems. Some scientists and philosophers argue that the self, the inner voice, the sense of being someone, is not a thing, but an illusion, a hallucination your brain generates to keep the system stable, a narrative, a mask, a useful shortcut for something far more complex. And maybe you've never questioned it. Maybe you've never paused and asked, who is thinking this thought? Who hears it? Who is the I in I exist? Because when you try to find it, to point at it, to catch it in the act, it slips away. There's always something behind it. Another thought, another feeling, another flicker of awareness pretending to be a person. The brain is a storyteller, and the self is its greatest story. A first-person protagonist stitched together from memory, identity, expectation, and language. It tells you where you came from, what you believe, what you want. But it's not fixed. It shifts, it edits, it lies, sometimes gently, sometimes completely. And yet you trust it. You say, this is me. But what if me is just a habit your neurons got good at repeating? We think of the self as a core, a center of gravity inside the mind. But neurologically, no such center exists. There's no one spot in the brain that does you. There are regions for memory, regions for emotion, for movement, language, reason, but no throne, no command center, just processes, circuits, patterns. And yet somehow they coalesce into something that feels solid, that feels like home. But even that feeling is fragile. Damage the right part of the brain, and the story breaks. People forget who they are. They lose their sense of agency. Their personality shifts. Their desires invert. Some even deny parts of their own body, or believe their reflection is a stranger, or feel like they're already dead. These aren't metaphors. These are documented conditions, proof that the self isn't a soul or a substance, but a process, a performance. And like any performance, it can glitch, or stop, or rewrite itself entirely. You felt it in moments of shock, in grief, in awe, in the mirror at 3 a.m. when you stare a little too long and wonder who's looking back. You felt it when you say something and wonder who said it. When you do something and don't recognize the person who did. When the thoughts in your head don't sound like yours. That's the illusion flickering, the mask slipping, and it's not something to fear. It's something to notice, to watch, because the self is useful. It organizes your life. It remembers your name. It lets you make plans, feel guilt, build identity. but it's also heavy. It clings to ideas. It tells you stories about who you are that may not be true. It insists that you are consistent, stable, knowable. But maybe you're not. Maybe you are a storm of tendencies, reactions, patterns, different people in different situations, all pretending to be one. You act different when you're tired, hungry, angry, safe, around family, around strangers, around no one. Which version is the real you, or is there no real you at all, just context, costume, chemistry? Some tradition saw through this long ago. In Buddhism, the self is seen as empty, not worthless, but impermanent, interconnected, made of causes and conditions, like a flame on a candle, real, but always changing, always burning new fuel. In neuroscience, that idea is echoed, that the self is not a noun, but a verb, not something you are, but something you do. A feedback loop of perception, memory, language, and embodiment, constantly updating, constantly performing, constantly forgetting that it's a performance. And yet even when you know this, the illusion stays. It's stubborn, it's convincing, it's built into the grammar of your thoughts. You say, I feel, I think, I want, as if there's someone inside doing those things. But what if there's no one there, just thoughts appearing, feelings rising, memories unfolding, no one owning them, just experience, flowing in a stream, mistaking itself for a person? Maybe that's why meditation feels so strange, why psychedelics unravel identity, why trauma fragments the self. They all reveal something we try hard to ignore, that you are not what you think you are. You are not the voice. You are not the story. You are the space behind it, the silence between the thoughts, the stillness watching it all pass. And maybe, just maybe, that's closer to the truth. Because if the self is an illusion, then what's left when it dissolves? If the self can dissolve and consciousness can fragment, then the next question becomes harder to ignore. Are we the only ones who feel this way? Is consciousness something unique to humans, or something older, deeper, and far more widespread than we like to admit? For centuries, people assumed that animals were just instinctive machines. They moved, they reacted, they survived, but they didn't feel, not like we do. They couldn't think or reflect or suffer in the same way. But over time, that belief has started to fall apart. And what's taking its place is stranger. Because if you look closely enough at the animal kingdom, the way an elephant mourns its dead, the way a dog dreams, the way an octopus solves puzzles, or a crow hides its food for tomorrow, something becomes clear. We are not alone in awareness. We never were. The consciousness we call human is not a miracle. It's a variation, a branch, and the tree it grew from stretches far across time. Consider the mirror test, a simple mark placed on the forehead, a mirror introduced. If the creature touches its own face, not the reflection, it suggests self-recognition, awareness that what it sees is itself. Not all pass, but some do. Great apes, dolphins, magpies, elephants, even ants under the right conditions. That flicker of self-awareness, the sense of I am, is not limited to our species. It emerges in others, in unfamiliar forms. And that should humble us, because it means that consciousness is not a prize we won. It's a spectrum we belong to. But the mirror test is just one measure. Some animals fail it and still show signs of deep inner life. Whales with unique names, rats who hesitate before harming others, bonobos who comfort the distressed, parrots who invent new words, orangutans who plan their actions days in advance. It's not just behavior, it's intention, it's choice, it's feeling, Pain, in particular, is one of the most disturbing signals. Lobsters avoid electric shocks. Crabs remember trauma. Birds show signs of grief. Some will give up food just to avoid harming others. These aren't reflexes, they're decisions. Patterns shaped not by pure instinct, but by something more, something closer to thought. The more we study animals, the more their minds begin to reveal themselves, not as lesser versions of ours, but as different worlds. A bat hears in sonar. A dog smells emotions. A bird navigates by magnetic fields. A whale sings songs that change over time and ripple across oceans. Each brain gives rise to a different consciousness, tuned to its own reality, shaped by its own needs, its own senses, its own body. And that diversity might be the most beautiful part, because it means that consciousness is not a single flame, but a galaxy of lights, each flickering in its own direction, each carrying its own form of being. And then there's the octopus, a creature with 9 brains, 3 hearts, color-shifting skin, and no skeleton. It can open jars, mimic other animals, escape aquariums, play, explore, even interact with humans in ways that feel oddly personal. Its neurons aren't all in its head. Most are spread across its arms. Each limb can taste, touch, and think independently. What does it feel like to be an octopus? To have a distributed mind, to move without bones, to see with polarized eyes? We may never know. But the question itself matters, because it reminds us that consciousness doesn't always look familiar. It doesn't need language. It doesn't need tools. It doesn't need a face that looks like ours. It only needs experience, subjectivity, a center of perception, even if it's fluid, even if it doesn't call itself I. And maybe that's the real shift, realizing that consciousness doesn't require reflection to be real. It doesn't need to pass our tests to be valid. A child may not recognize themselves in a mirror, but they still feel. So does a cat, a raven, a newborn, perhaps even a fish, perhaps even more. Consciousness, in this view, is not something that appears fully formed, but something that grows, that deepens, that stretches and adapts and flickers in different shapes across different creatures. Not binary, not on or off, but gradual, layered, mysterious. And if that's true, then we live in a world filled with it. A world of eyes watching, bodies feeling, minds dreaming. And if awareness blooms in others, if we are not the only ones who sense the world from the inside, then maybe the universe is far more awake than we thought. If the universe is more awake than we thought, then who's doing the watching? Behind your thoughts, your emotions, your senses, something still remains. Not loud, not dramatic, not even obvious at first, but it's there. A silent witness, an awareness that never sleeps, even when your body does. You probably felt it without realizing. The part of you that notices thoughts rise and fall without choosing them. The space that remains when your mind goes blank. The odd clarity when you suddenly realize, I'm thinking. But who is realizing that? What's the I that steps back and sees the process? It's not your name, not your face, not your habits or memories. Strip all that away and something remains. Still, bare, watching. It has no personality, no judgment, no timeline. It's not interested in who you've been or who you plan to become. It just watches. And it doesn't care what it's watching. Pleasure, pain, anger, love. It sees all of it like clouds passing through an endless sky. That's why some call it the sky mind, the field, the observer. It has no edges, and yet it surrounds everything. You can't point to it, but you know it's there, not just inside your head, but behind your experience. The weird thing is, it feels older than you. Not like your inner child, not your past self. Just old, timeless. Like it was always there, even when you were too busy to notice it. And when you finally do, you start to see how noisy everything else is. How much of what you think is you is just movement. Stories, reactions, plans, regrets, cravings. The witness doesn't engage. It just watches them unfold. And in that stillness, there's a peace that can't be explained. It doesn't need fixing. It doesn't want more. It doesn't cling. It doesn't compare. It doesn't narrate life. It receives it. Every breath, every flicker of thought, every heartbeat. It's the part of you that doesn't change even when everything else does. You can dye your hair, lose your memory, change your name, fall apart, build yourself back, and yet something inside will still be looking out through your eyes, unchanged. When you cry, it watches. When you rage, it watches. When you numb yourself to avoid pain, it watches even that. Not with judgment, not with pity, just with presence. You may forget it for years, get lost in identity, distraction, ego. But the witness never forgets you. It doesn't need words. It doesn't even need you to believe in it. It's not spiritual or scientific. It just is, no matter what you do. And the more time you spend in its presence, the less chaotic life feels. Not because the chaos goes away, but because you're no longer fusing with every wave that crashes. You become the ocean, not the wave, the sky, not the storm, the screen, not the movie. You see your fear without becoming it. You notice pain without dissolving inside it. You hear the voice in your head without thinking it's the whole truth. And that distance, that soft space between you and your thoughts, it changes everything. Some call it the soul. Others say it's just a trick of attention. But names don't matter. What matters is the shift. When you see it clearly, the observer, the watcher, you stop feeling like a puppet. You stop mistaking every emotion as a command. You begin to live from stillness, from silence, from a part of you that can't be harmed because it doesn't attach. It just sees. And in that seeing, there's grace. Because even when your body shakes, your mind panics, your past tries to drown you, that quiet awareness remains, untouched, like the eye of a storm, like the mirror that reflects every image but is stained by none. You can scream into it, cry in front of it, try to run from it, but it will wait, patient, present, permanent. And when everything else falls apart, the beliefs, the identity, the need to be anything at all, the witness will still be there, seeing it all unfold, not as a God, not as a voice, just as the quiet you behind every version of you. What if you're dreaming right now? Not in the way sleep brings hallucinations and shifting landscapes, but in the quiet way your waking life can blur into unreality. You walk through your day with thoughts swirling, stories running, images flickering behind your eyes. But where is your attention, really? Most people assume dreaming stops when we open our eyes. But sometimes the deepest dreams are the ones we don't notice, the ones that feel like truth. You imagine the future, replay the past. You argue with someone who isn't in the room. You rehearse moments that never happen. You fear outcomes that may never arrive. And all the while, life goes on around you. People speak. The wind moves. Your breath flows in and out. But your awareness is somewhere else. Not here, not now, not fully. This is what it means to dream while awake, to drift through life trapped in stories, to live inside the theater of your mind while the real world flickers past like scenery. You convince yourself these thoughts are necessary, that you need to plan, need to analyze, need to solve. But underneath it all, you're just avoiding stillness, because stillness is where the truth waits, and the truth is quiet. Stillness reveals what's really happening, that you're breathing, that the sun is warm on your skin, that there's a strange ache in your chest that no one sees, that the present moment is raw and unscripted and doesn't bend to your mind's expectations. And so you keep drifting like a ghost, awake in body but dreaming in mind. Sometimes the dream becomes so immersive that you forget it's even a dream. You start believing your thoughts are facts, that your fears are prophecies, that your insecurities are reflections, that the voice narrating your life must be trusted without question. But the mind doesn't just reflect the world, it creates it. It builds filters, edits perception, tells you what to see, what to ignore, what to fear. And without awareness, you fall under its spell. You react without understanding. You chase without knowing why. You feel pain and think it defines you. You feel desire and think it owns you. You forget you're watching a story and instead become the story. This is why some people wake up in moments of shock, in grief, in love, in silence, because something breaks the dream. Something shakes the mind loose from its loop, and suddenly the world feels new again. The colors sharper, the air heavier, the moment more alive, and you realize you hadn't really been here before. You were elsewhere, caught in a maze of thoughts you didn't question, sleepwalking through your own life, and now that you're back, everything feels strange, beautiful, unfamiliar, like seeing the world for the first time. But it never left. You did. The dream isn't evil. It isn't broken. It's part of being human. Your brain predicts, remembers, protects. It spins stories to help you survive. But you are not just the stories. You are the one who can wake up inside them, the one who can watch a thought and say, "That's not me," the one who can feel fear and still stay present, the one who can return to the moment without needing to fix anything. This is lucid waking, not perfect, not free of thought, just aware of the dream as it happens. And from that awareness, something shifts. The world softens. Time slows. You stop needing to chase the next moment because this one is finally enough. Not because it's special, but because you're truly in it. Awake, here, alive. But even now, awake and aware, you still carry a question. Who exactly is awake? You say I, but what is that built from? Memory, language, experience? All your life you've been constructing an identity, brick by invisible brick, and calling it the self. A name, a face, a style, a way of speaking, a history. You gather roles like costume, student, friend, child, creator, failure, hope. You reinforce them every time someone calls your name or expects you to act a certain way. But beneath all of them is a strange hunger to finally answer the question that never truly leaves you alone. Who am I, really? And why does it matter so much to be someone? You think the answer lives in your past, so you dig through memories, clinging to childhood snapshots and pivotal moments like artifacts. You think it lives in your future, so you chase achievement, image, and identity like they hold the missing piece. But identity isn't something you find like a treasure. It's something you build like a house. And every room, every wall, every window is shaped by the culture you live in, the trauma you carry, the stories you were told, and the ones you now tell yourself. If you had grown up in a different country, with a different language, different fears, different myths, would you still be you? Or would your entire sense of self be made of different building blocks, different expectations, different limits? That's the strange thing about identity. It feels so solid, but it's made of smoke, and you don't notice it until you stop and really look. You say, "This is who I am," but the parts of you that feel most real today may disappear tomorrow. You change, but your belief in your unchanging self does not. Every year you shift. Every decade you look back at the version of you who once existed and feel like you're watching a stranger, but you still say "me" as if that word always means the same thing. Your habits change. Your opinions evolve. Your desires mutate. But you protect identity like it's sacred. And maybe it is. Or maybe it's just a well-rehearsed illusion, a necessary one to help you survive. The brain needs a reference point. Something to say, "This is me," so it can predict what matters and what doesn't. But that reference point is constantly updated, reinforced by repetition, rewritten by experience. You call it personality. But most of it is memory and momentum. You think you're choosing who you are, but most of the time you're just repeating who you've been. And even that repetition is shaped by feedback loops. You laugh a certain way and people like it, so you do it again. You express anger and it works once, so it becomes a pattern. You avoid something once and feel safer, so it becomes part of your fear identity. And layer by layer, this architecture of identity grows, not as something eternal, but as something rehearsed, sculpted, reinforced, and yet it feels permanent. It feels real because it's been with you for so long. But what if the feeling of self is just a useful hallucination? A story stitched together by the brain to make life navigable. Not a lie, but not the truth either. Just a function. A mask that became fused to the face. And here's where it gets even stranger. You can be aware of that identity, which means you are not it. You are the space it happens in. You are the observer of the shifting mask, the builder of the character, the watcher behind the drama. And when you see that, something softens. You stop being so desperate to prove who you are. You stop defending every thought like it's a fortress. You stop reacting to everything that threatens your image because you realize it's just an image. The real you, the silent you, is untouched. It doesn't need a name. It doesn't need to be seen. It just is. And from that place, you can choose. You can shape identity like clay instead of treating it like stone. You can release parts that don't serve you anymore. You can rewrite the story. You can even sit in the mystery, the raw space where you don't know who you are, and still feel whole. Because you are not broken, you are not incomplete. You are just shifting. And identity was never meant to be a prison. It was meant to be a process, something you grow through, not cling to. Something that evolves with awareness, not calcifies with fear. You are not what you were told. You are not what you feared. You are the architect, the dreamer, the watcher, the breath behind the name. And every time you remember that, identity becomes lighter, softer, something you wear, not something you are. The mirror never shows you the truth. It shows you a surface, a reflection, a shape made of light, but not you, not the thing that feels, aches, thinks, and watches, and yet you believe it every time. You stare into it and see flaws, lines, imperfections, or maybe you see beauty, power, identity. But either way, it becomes a judge, a screen you project your self-worth onto. You forget that the mirror only captures appearance, not experience. It reflects skin, not soul, expression, not essence. And still you ask it questions. Do I look good enough? Do I look strong enough? Would they love me if I looked different? Would I love myself? But the mirror never answers. It just mimics. It feeds you what your mind is already whispering. On a good day, it flatters you. On a bad day, it confirms your worst fears. But the mirror lies both ways. It is neither truth nor enemy. It is a void, one that reflects only what you bring to it. You think it's objective, but it's shaped by mood, by memory, by comparison. You don't see yourself as you are. You see yourself as you fear or hope to be. That's why some days you can't stand your own face, and other days it feels familiar and fine. The mirror didn't change. You did. Your self-perception is a moving target, and the mirror dances with it. But no matter how long you stare, you'll never find yourself in the glass. Because what makes you real can't be seen. It can only be felt from within. And still, we cling to mirrors, literal ones, digital ones, social ones, likes, comments, compliments, criticisms, all mirrors, all distorted, all addictive. You begin shaping yourself for the mirror, adjusting your posture, your voice, your energy, not to feel more alive, but to appear better, more acceptable, more desirable. You start editing your identity based on what bounces back. And slowly, invisibly, you become a version of yourself that only exists in reflection. Polished, posed, curated, but hollow. Because you're no longer living from within. You're waiting for the mirror to approve, to say yes, to say now you're enough. But it never does. Even when it flatters you, it plants doubt. Because the moment you start depending on it, you lose the inner compass. You forget what it means to simply be, not as a character, not as an image, but as the presence behind the mirror, the one who sees, the one who feels, the one who doesn't need proof. That presence, that awareness, it never looks back at you, it just lives, unreflected, undivided. And when you rest in that space, the mirror loses power. It still shows something, but it no longer defines you. It becomes a tool, not a god, a surface, not a verdict. And you start to see through it, see the layers of illusion it always offered. Because here's the truth. The mirror isn't evil. It's just incomplete. It can show your face, but not your fire. It can capture your outline, but not your silence. It can freeze an expression, but never touch your depth. And once you see that clearly, the obsession begins to fade. You stop checking it for permission to exist. You stop adjusting for the camera. You stop needing your own face to approve of your life. Because you found something deeper than looks, something real, something no mirror can hold. And when you speak from there, move from there, love from there, the reflection no longer matters. Because you're no longer living for the eyes looking in. You're living from the awareness looking out. You thought you were peeling back the truth one layer at a time. You unwrapped identity and found the quiet watcher behind it. You stared into the mirror and saw the illusion of reflection. But just when you thought you were close to something real, another layer appeared. And this one is harder to see because it hides beneath every moment of your waking life. It's the belief that what you experience is what exists, that the world around you is the world as it truly is. But perception is not reality. It's an interface, a useful, biologically efficient hallucination. What you see is not what's there. It's what your brain believes you need to see to survive. Light has no color. Sound has no volume. Objects have no edge. The brain takes electromagnetic waves, vibrations, chemical signals, and constructs a world from them. It guesses. It fills in gaps. It builds consistency from chaos, and it lies to you constantly. The desk feels solid, but it's mostly empty space. The red you see isn't in the light. It's in your brain. Time feels linear, but your memories prove otherwise. The world isn't made of things. It's made of interpretations. And you, the observer, mistake those interpretations for truth. You trust your senses like a child trusts a parent. But your senses are biased, blind, and often broken. Your brain edits what you see before you see it. It deletes the details that don't fit your expectations. It stitches the present together from scraps of the past. Even when you think you're awake, you're dreaming. A waking dream shared by others who hallucinate in the same style. And because your dream overlaps with theirs, you call it real. But this dream has layers, and each one protects the next. Language is one, time is another. Memory, identity, logic, emotion, all tools your brain uses to stabilize the illusion. You give names to things so they seem permanent. You assign meaning so the chaos becomes comfortable. You tell stories to make the randomness feel sacred. But underneath the labels, there is no chair, no tree, no self. Just patterns, shifting forms, temporary constructs given shape by attention. When you stop naming things, the illusion begins to melt. When you stop chasing time, it stops chasing you. When you stop believing every thought, they lose their grip. But your mind doesn't like that. It panics in silence. It fears the unknown. So it builds again, constructs again. It says, this must be the truth. It attaches to the next belief, the next philosophy. Even the idea of awakening becomes another layer, another mask. You begin to wear awakened the same way you once wore confused. And the ego reforms, softer this time, smarter, more subtle, but still ego, still identity, still separation, and yet something sees even that. Something untouched by belief or doubt. A presence behind every mask. The silence behind every thought. The witness who doesn't care if the dream is beautiful or broken, it just watches. Patient, still, unmoved. And when you stop reaching, stop peeling, stop needing to name the final layer, you feel it. Not a truth, not a fact, but a kind of vanishing, like fog clearing, like gravity loosening, like waking up without trying. You stop being someone trying to understand, and you just become the space where understanding could happen. You don't dissolve, you don't rise, you just remain, like the sky beneath the storm, like the mirror that reflects nothing, just open, still, aware. That's not the end of the layers, but it's the first time you stop needing there to be one. You think you're the one having thoughts, but have you ever stopped to ask where they come from? Not metaphorically, literally. You sit in silence and suddenly a memory appears, a voice from your past, an image, a plan, a craving. You didn't summon it. It just arrived. And another comes after it. Then another. A chain weaving itself out of nowhere, pretending it's important. But if you didn't call these thoughts into being, why do you assume they belong to you? Why do you say, I am thinking, when what's really happening is just thinking, flowing, triggering, associating? You're not thinking the thought. The thought is thinking you. It's steering your attention. It's choosing what you focus on. It's defining who you think you are. You say, I'm anxious. But really, the anxious thought arose and you merged with it. You forgot it was just a passing cloud and let it become your sky. And then the thought creates another, a thought about how to fix the anxiety, a plan, a fear, a doubt, another cloud, another mask. And so the spiral begins. One thought dressing up as you, followed by another thought pretending it's here to help. You try to think your way out of thought, like trying to climb out of quicksand by wriggling harder. But the mind is clever. It doesn't let go just because you want it to. It wants control. It wants answers. It wants to think its way into stillness. And in doing that, it generates more noise. Even the desire to be free becomes another cage. The wish to stop thinking is itself a thought, a loop, a trap disguised as a key. But the truth is, you don't need to stop your thoughts. You only need to see them clearly. Watch them arrive. Watch them leave. Don't argue. Don't agree. Just observe. The thought says, "You'll fail." Watch it. The thought says, "She never loved you." Watch it. The thought says, "You're enlightened now." Watch that too. Each one arises in the same place, the same screen, the same silent space behind your forehead that never changes, no matter what moves through it. And in that space, something opens. Not silence, not control, just awareness. Awareness that sees the thought but isn't pulled into its gravity. And slowly, you stop being the thinker. You become the witness. And the witness isn't trying to change anything. It's just there, present, unmoved, unbothered by the shape of the thought or the memory it drags in or the emotion it carries. It doesn't say, "This is good" or "This is bad." It just notices. And in that noticing, the thought begins to dissolve, not because you defeated it, but because you didn't feed it. It fades, like a shadow in light, like a whisper in wind, and beneath that fading, something else is revealed, something that was never born and can't be named. The mind tries to define it. It's peace, it says. It's higher consciousness. It's God. It's me. But those are just thoughts again. The thing you're touching can't be held, can't be owned, can't even be thought about. It just is. It watches the thoughts come and go the same way the ocean watches waves crash and disappear. And when you rest in that presence, you stop chasing. You stop fixing. You stop identifying. You stop needing to be someone inside the mind's stories. Because you've seen the one thing the thoughts can never understand. You exist before them, beneath them, without them. And that's the strange gift of thought. It pretends to be your enemy. It creates pain. It loops stories. It wakes you at 3 a.m. with imaginary conversations. But in all its noise, it points to what it can't reach. It's loud so that you can notice the silence underneath. It distracts so that you can remember stillness. It lies so that you'll hunger for what's real. And eventually, you stop blaming the thoughts. You stop fearing them. You stop believing that their presence means something's wrong. They're just weather, just movement, just echoes of a mind trying to make sense of what it cannot grasp. And you, whatever you are not inside that storm. You are the sky it passes through. You are not the thought. You are the place it appears. But even when the mind grows quiet and the thoughts lose their grip, there's another kind of noise that doesn't come from within. It comes from the outside, from the reflection in someone else's eyes, from the pause before a stranger speaks, from the invisible weight of being seen, categorized, remembered. Every time someone looks at you, a new version of you is born. And slowly, you start collecting them. The good student, the black sheep, the polite child, the awkward one, the pretty one, the one who never speaks, the one who's always too much. They give you names. They give you roles. And without realizing, you start carrying them. You walk into a room and suddenly you're acting, adjusting posture, tone, language, subtly playing a version of yourself that was shaped by the memory of how others reacted. You think it's your personality, but it's just muscle memory, adaptation, a survival reflex, something ancient in your nervous system that remembers, if they don't accept me, I won't be safe. So you become what they expect, or you become the opposite. Either way, you're still in reaction, still shaped by the noise of their gaze, and over time, their perceptions become your prison. Not because they locked you in, but because you forgot you had the key. You started believing them, trusting that their shallow reflections were somehow more real than the presence you feel when you're alone. The tragedy is most of them never truly saw you. They saw a projection of their own fears, desires, and unfinished stories. They called it you, and you accepted it. And now you live in a hall of mirrors, unsure which reflection is yours, if any of them ever were. There's a deeper silence that lives beneath this noise, a version of you untouched by the world's labels. You can feel it sometimes, just before sleep, or when you're walking alone and no one needs anything from you. It has no story, no history. It isn't trying to be good or strong or interesting. It's just here, watching, breathing, being. But the moment someone enters the room, it hides again, covered by the old costume, the trained face, the remembered role. You can't silence this noise by running away. Even solitude won't protect you if your mind still clings to how you're remembered. The only way out is through. You have to watch the performance without performing. Let the roles appear without accepting the part. Notice who you become in front of each person, and then notice the one who's noticing. That's you. That's always been you. Not the version that changes to survive, but the awareness watching the change. That's the real presence, the still wordless space behind the masks. And from that space, something strange happens. You stop needing to be known. You stop needing to be liked. You stop needing to be understood by people who only ever saw fragments. You start choosing stillness over applause, truth over branding, connection over performance. And when someone truly sees you, not a version of you, but you feel it like gravity. No tension, no theater, just meeting, just presence. And that kind of presence is rare. Most people never get it. They perform their whole life and die never knowing what it's like to be met without expectation. But you're starting to see it now. You're starting to remember that you are not what they named. You are not what they judged. You are not the sum of other people's unfinished thoughts. You are what watches the noise without reacting. And in that watching, the noise becomes silence. The role dissolves. The mirror cracks. And you return, not to who they said you were, but to who you were before anyone ever looked. But even in that silence, something stirs. A flicker from the past. A memory you didn't summon. A scene you didn't ask to relive. You feel it before you see it. A familiar tension in your stomach. The echo of a smell. The sound of a voice that only exists in your head now. And it feels real. Undeniably yours. But is it? You trust it because it arrived uninvited, because it carried emotion, because it fit the story you've always told about who you are. But memory doesn't work like a video recorder. It doesn't preserve, it reconstructs. Every time you recall a memory, you don't pull it from a vault. You rebuild it from fragments. The brain fills in what it forgets. It merges truth with imagination. It edits out what feels inconvenient. It smooths the rough edges of pain or sharpens them, depending on what the mind wants to believe. You think you remember what happened, but you're remembering the version you last replayed, and that version was already warped, tinted, by what you felt, what you feared, who you needed to be. You're not carrying your past. You're carrying a simulation of your past, and that simulation is alive. It grows, shrinks, adapts. It protects you from some truths and exaggerates others. It turns whispers into screams and silence into betrayal, and slowly it becomes your compass. You let it guide who you trust, who you love, what you avoid, what you think you deserve. But a compass built from illusions doesn't point north. It leads you in circles. It shows you ghosts and calls them warnings. It drags you back into places you've already escaped. And then you say, I've always been like this. But you haven't. You've just always believed the story the memory told. And the most haunting part is this: memory lies best when it tells you what you want to hear. That you were the victim, that you were the hero, that you were abandoned, that you were special. Whatever makes the story feel coherent, the brain will serve it up. It doesn't care about truth, it cares about continuity, a thread, a narrative that explains the self. So even the most vivid memories, ones that bring tears, rage, longing, might be echoes of echoes. Moments rehearsed into certainty. But how many things did you forget because they didn't fit? The kindness in the middle of the fight, the apology you ignored, the laughter after the trauma. Memories aren't just selective, they're strategic. They shape identity. They build the mask. And the pieces that don't support that mask, they dissolve. And even when you try to remember clearly, you can't go back to the original. You can only access the copy of the copy. A faded photograph rewritten by time, emotion, and self-preservation. So what happens when you stop trusting memory as fact? When you look at it not as a record, but as a dream that thinks it's awake. You stop clinging to who you think you were. You stop defending the version of yourself built from half-remembered pain. And in that moment, something opens. You don't need to rewrite your past. You just stop letting it write you. Because what matters is not what happened. It's what's happening now. The awareness beneath the story, the silence underneath the narrative, the part of you that watches memories rise and fall without grabbing onto them. That's where you begin again, not in a timeline, not in a label, but in the space behind remembering, the part of you that doesn't need a past to exist, the part that was here before any memory was made. You existed before memory, before identity, before any label clung to your skin. But what does before even mean if time isn't what it seems? You live like time is real, like it moves forward in a line, like you're walking down a hallway with a door behind you marked past and a locked one in front labeled future. But what if there is no hallway, no motion? What if the illusion of time is just the mind's desperate attempt to organize the infinite? You speak in hours and days, but your experience doesn't unfold in numbers. It unfolds in sensations. You remember feelings, not timestamps. The brain doesn't archive minutes. It archives moments. And those moments are stored out of order. You've felt something today that reminded you of something from childhood. You've smelled something that collapsed decades into a single breath. And when you dream, your mind bends time like gravity bends light. You can live a lifetime in 10 seconds. You can travel backwards and forwards and sideways. You can die and wake up again, all in the span of one night. So what is time, really? It's not a river carrying you along. It's a map you drew after the fact, a way to explain change. Without change, there is no time. A frozen universe would have no past or future, only stillness. Time is born in movement, in decay, in growth, in loss. And yet, even those things are illusions when you stop measuring, when you stop comparing, when you stop narrating. Because if you don't label it, the moment just is. Whole, timeless, complete. You say you're aging, but what's really aging is the body, the cells, the molecules. You, the awareness behind the eyes, haven't moved an inch. You were here when you were 5. You're still here now, not older, just watching a different part of the movie. The movie plays, the characters change, the scenes shift, but the screen doesn't age, it doesn't travel, it doesn't end. And yet you chase time, you race clocks, you panic about how little of it you've left. You measure your worth by how on schedule you are. You say you're behind or ahead or are running out. But where exactly are you trying to arrive? There's no destination, no final point where the timeline says complete. Because the timeline is yours, invented, maintained, protected by habit. Time doesn't exist without memory and expectation. Take away those two things, and you're left with only presence, and yet that presence is where everything actually happens. Every decision, every realization, every breath takes place in the eternal now. The past is a reconstruction. The future is a projection. Only now is lived. Only now is real. But your mind can't hold the now. It's too quiet, too still, so it builds scaffolding. Before, after, later, soon. It clings to sequence. It needs narrative to feel safe. But the deeper truth is terrifying to the thinking mind. Nothing is coming and nothing has gone. There's only this breath, this silence, this awareness that doesn't tick forward, doesn't count down, doesn't wait. And here's what's most unsettling. When you finally stop chasing time, it stops chasing you. The anxiety thins. The future loses its teeth. The past loses its chains. And you see what's always been waiting underneath. A stillness that never ends. A presence that never began. A version of you that never needed time to exist. You were not born in a moment. You're not dying in one. You are the watcher behind every moment. The one who saw it all pass but never passed with it. The one who heard the ticking and realized the sound was coming from inside the dream. The clocks don't trap you. The calendar doesn't define you. The hours only hurt when you believe they're running out. But what can run out when you were never in? What can end when you never began? You are not your timeline. You are not the story. You are not the hourglass. You are the sky it sits in, the silence that holds it, the presence that sees it all drift by without ever moving an inch. You are not the timeline, not the story, not the hourglass. You are the silence watching it all pass. But if you are not time, then what are you doing in this body that ages? What are you, if not the bones and blood and breath that carry you from room to room? You say, my body, like it belongs to you, like you're the owner of this machine, but you didn't build it. You didn't stitch the muscle or carve the spine or lace the nerves that fire before you even think. You didn't design the heartbeat or program the hunger or tell the lungs when to inhale. This body arrived already in motion, already obeying rules you never set. And still you say, I'm tired, I'm cold, I'm broken, I'm healing. But are you? Or is that just the vessel speaking while the watcher listens? Your heart has never once waited for your opinion. Your skin has shed more times than you could ever count. Your hair grows in silence. Your cells die and divide like waves breaking on an invisible shore. You're not the conductor of this symphony. You're the audience. You witness the movement and mistake it for control. But what part of your body do you truly command? Not the blood, not the bones, not the dreams that rise when your eyes close. And when the pain comes, uninvited, burning, sharp, you realize again how little say you really have. You are not holding the body. The body is holding you, like a river holds a leaf, like a storm holds the wind. And yet, it's personal, intimate. You feel its pleasure and agony like they're your own. You flinch when it bleeds. You cry when it fails. You hide it, decorate it, shame it, worship it. You build identity around its shape. You build pride or guilt depending on how closely it resembles what you think it should be. But the body was never meant to be an image. It was meant to be an experience, a doorway, a brief vehicle for sensation, and just like a dream, you only notice its strangeness when you wake up. You say, I am my body, but the body you had when you were 4 is gone. So is the one you had at 10. So is the one you had last year. Every 7 years, your cells have mostly regenerated. You are not built, you are rebuilt, constantly. New blood, new skin, new bacteria, new scars. But something remains. Some silent center that watched it all change and didn't change with it. And what is that thing? What is the part of you that didn't get older? The part that remembers but was never remembered. The part that observes pain but doesn't hurt. The part that feels love but doesn't need a heartbeat to feel it. You can call it soul or mind or consciousness, but labels don't hold it. Because whatever it is, it's not physical. It can't be weighed. It can't be seen on a scan. It doesn't live in the tissue. It lives behind the eyes. And maybe that's why the body feels like a place, not a person, like a temporary home, like something you woke up inside. And when it's tired, you feel the fatigue, but you are not the fatigue. When it's injured, you feel the pain, but you are not the wound. When it dies, maybe you feel the ending, but maybe you are not the end, because even when it sleeps, you remain. Even when it dreams, you watch. Even when it's unconscious, something in you keeps observing. And what if that watcher isn't just watching the body, but borrowing it, like slipping into a suit you didn't make, like moving through a world that isn't yours but feels real while it lasts? That would mean the body is a costume, a translator, a lens. It allows you to feel cold so you understand safety, to feel hunger so you understand desire, to feel pain so you understand love. But the longer you wear it, the more you forget it's temporary. You begin to confuse the mask with the mirror. And one day, you look into your own eyes and ask, is this really me? And that question haunts you, not because it's frightening, but because something inside already knows the answer. You are not this body. You are the thing that climbed into it, the thing that will one day climb out. But if you're not the body and you're not the time it moves through, then what's been narrating your life from the inside? That voice, that running commentary inside your head. It speaks like you, remembers like you, worries like you. But is it really you? Sit still, really still, and just listen. That voice never stops. It argues, plans, obsesses, rehearses. It tells you who you are, what you should do, what you did wrong. It repeats names and memories like a stuck record. It tells you you're not good enough, then tells you you're better than others. It begs for attention, then scolds you for being needy. It imagines future disasters and past regrets, sometimes at the same time. And all the while it's speaking with your accent, using your language, sounding so familiar you never thought to question it. But who's hearing it? Who's noticing the voice? That's you. Not the speaker, but the listener, the watcher behind the words. Because the voice isn't conscious. It's reactive. It responds to patterns, to memories, to sensory data and emotion. It speaks after experience. It can't predict what you'll think next because it is the thought. And once it arises, it pretends it was always there. But if it were truly you, you'd control it. You'd choose each sentence. You'd never think thoughts you hate. You wouldn't repeat insults in your own head. You wouldn't imagine arguments that never happened. You wouldn't let fear replay the same loop for days. But you do. Because it's not you. It's a program. A loud, ancient software looping across the stage while you sit quietly in the dark. And when you stop identifying with it, everything shifts. The voice panics. It tries harder. It screams. It says, "This silence is dangerous." But it's lying. Because in that silence, something deeper wakes up. A presence that doesn't talk, doesn't explain, doesn't rush to define. It just sees, just feels, just exists. And you've known it before. You've touched it when you stare at the sky too long, when music overwhelms your thinking, when awe strikes and you lose your name. That's the real you, not the thought, but the gap between them, not the chatter, but the stillness underneath. And once you rest in that stillness, the voice becomes what it always was. Background noise, not a narrator, but a static buzz, a survival tool, a mental reflex evolved to keep you alive, not enlightened. It served a purpose once, solving problems, anticipating threats, labeling experience, but now it loops endlessly, stuck in a world it doesn't understand. And yet, you keep believing it. You let it define your worth. You let it tell you stories and call them reality. But it's just telling itself stories about itself. And you are not in them. You are the one hearing them. And when you really see that, when the watcher wakes up, the game changes. You don't need the voice to go silent. You just stop mistaking it for truth. It talks, and you don't answer. It argues, and you don't respond. It judges, and you just notice. It fades like a shadow when you stop chasing the light that casts it. And in that absence, the world softens. The noise thins. The inner pressure releases, and a space opens, one that was always there, buried under words. You were never the voice. You were the field it passed through. You were never the speaker. You were the witness. And once you return to that knowing, the thoughts can't trap you anymore. They still come, but they no longer come with chains. You've stepped back from the voice. You've stopped mistaking thought for truth. You've found the quiet watcher, the one that listens without speaking, the silent field behind the noise. And for a moment, it feels like home, like stillness at the center of chaos. But then you notice something strange. If you can observe your thoughts, and you can observe the one observing them, then who's doing that observing? What part of you is watching the watcher? There's no answer, just a feeling, a loop, a hall of mirrors in the mind where the one who sees is also being seen, where awareness becomes its own object, folding inward over and over. And suddenly the question, who am I, doesn't feel like a riddle anymore. It feels like an infinite regress, like standing between two mirrors and watching yourself stretch away into a blur. You thought you were the voice in your head. Then you saw that voice was just noise. You thought you were the presence beneath the thoughts. But now even that presence seems visible. It too is lit up by something deeper, something beyond, something that doesn't speak, doesn't identify, doesn't even try to understand. It just witnesses, silently, endlessly. You peel away the thinker, then the observer of the observer, and every time something else is still watching, still there, still aware, and you never reach the end, because there isn't one, What you are isn't hiding beneath the layers. What you are is the space between them, the awareness that makes the layers possible. The seeing, not the seer. The knowing, not the knower. Not a self, but selfless seeing. And maybe that's why you can never find the real you. Because there's nothing to find. Nothing solid to grab. No final core to point to. Just a process. A motionless noticing. An infinite unfolding. And the more you look, the more it slips away. Because you are using the thing you're trying to find to look for itself. The flashlight can't illuminate the bulb. The knife can't cut itself. The eye can't see itself. And your mind can't grasp what you are. Because you are what's doing the grasping. You can't stand outside it and point. You can only be it. And you already are. You always have been. You were that awareness when you were 5 years old. Before identity, before language, you were it last night when your thoughts quieted in the dark. You were it during dreams, during silence, during pain. You were it before memory, before time, before body, before thought. You are not in the world. The world is in you, not in your mind, not in your brain, but in the field of awareness that experiences it. And that awareness isn't inside your skull. It isn't personal. It doesn't belong to you. It just is. It shows up everywhere experience does. It exists even when identity collapses, even when memory fails, even when the voice in your head forgets what it was saying. Awareness doesn't flicker when thought does. It doesn't decay with the body. It doesn't age with the timeline. And once you glimpse that, not as an idea, but as a living realization, everything softens. The voice loses its grip. The story loses its chains. You stop needing to define yourself. You stop needing to find yourself. You stop needing to be anything at all because there's nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing to become. The search ends not in an answer, but in a silence so vast it holds every answer inside it. And you're already that silence, always were. The same you that watched childhood fade, the same you that watches thought rise, the same you that watches your breath come and go without ever moving. You are not the mirror. You are not the reflection. You are the open space the mirror hangs in, empty, still, watching forever. You've peeled away the voice, the thoughts, the story, the body, even the silent witness. You've gone deeper than identity, deeper than memory, deeper than self. And now you're resting in something formless, something still, something infinite. But there's one illusion left, one final trick that keeps the dream alive, the illusion that you are separate, that you are over here, and everything else is out there, that there's a gap between your experience and the world that contains it, that you are inside the body looking out through the eyes, and that everything beyond your skin is not you. But pause. Look again. Where exactly is the edge? Where do you end and the world begin? Not in theory, not in language, but in direct experience. You see a tree, you hear the wind, you feel your breath, but all of that is happening where? Inside your field of awareness, inside the same knowing that watches your thoughts. The tree appears in you, the sound appears in you, the body appears in you, everything you've ever seen, touched, loved, feared, it's all appeared in the same place, the same open presence, the same quiet watching, and none of it has ever been outside it. So what if there is no outside? What if the world doesn't surround you? What if it arises within you? What if the boundary between self and other has always been imagined? Not evil, not wrong, just a misunderstanding so ancient it became invisible. You were taught to say me and you, this and that, subject and object, But none of those lines hold up when you stop using language and just experience. In raw awareness, there is no line, no cut, no split between you and what you're seeing. Just seamless happening. Just sensation blooming in the same field. One field, always one. And you're not in it. You are it. You're not watching the universe from a distance. You are the distance collapsing. The space where perception happens. The canvas on which it's all drawn. And the moment you truly see that, something deeper than peace arrives. A kind of awe. A soft, wordless knowing that you were never behind the eyes, never inside the body. You were always the field that holds it all, and every person you've ever met was never separate, never outside, never other. They were made of the same awareness, speaking into the same silence, appearing inside the same infinite mirror. And that's when something ancient starts to melt. The loneliness you never quite understood, the sense of being exiled from the world, begins to fade. Not because you found your place, but because you realized there never was a wall. The wall was made of ideas. The I and you, the mine and yours. The little fence posts of identity and boundary that language taught you to believe, but in stillness they dissolve. You realize you don't occupy a space. You are space, not a volume, not a form, just openness. The open sky of awareness that everything rises and falls inside. The sun doesn't shine on you, it shines in you. The wind doesn't pass by. It arises as sensation in the field. The stars don't hang above. They bloom inside the quiet that you are. And the voice in your head, so loud, so familiar, is no different. Another ripple in the same ocean. And the thoughts it sends, the ones that say, I am this, I need that, I am a part, are just echoes of that same illusion, separation, the dream of distance, the trance of me versus world. But now you're waking up, not to a new identity, but to no identity, not to a better version of you, but to the end of the illusion of other. You are not a person in a world. You are the world watching itself from a single angle. You are the wind becoming aware of its own motion. You are the eye of the storm and the storm itself. And even that sentence is too small, too defined, because you are the space where that sentence appears. You are not one thing watching another. You are the watching, the seeing, the knowing, the field. And once that knowing deepens, not as thought but as quiet clarity, everything changes, not loud, not fast, just softer, less urgency, less needing, less division. You stop grasping for what's already inside you. You stop searching for a place when you are the space itself. And all that remains is this: one breath, one presence, one field, undivided, unbroken. And if you listen closely, in that stillness, you can feel it. Something beautiful, noticing itself through your eyes. So you reach the end, not of the world, not of life, not even of the mind. You reach the end of the illusion, the final boundary, the soft dissolving of everything you thought was you. You followed the spiral inward, through the thoughts, through the voice, through the watcher, through the field. You peeled each layer gently, not to find something underneath, but to see that there was never anything solid to begin with. Just sensations arising in space, just echoes moving through silence, just identity floating like mist, pretending to be real. And now that mist has cleared, not with a bang, not with a shout, but with a stillness so quiet it almost goes unnoticed. And yet, here you are, more here than ever. Not the character, not the thinker, not the doer, just the awareness they all pass through. You didn't create it. You didn't choose it. You didn't earn it. You remembered it. The quiet watching that's always been present behind every moment of your life. The stillness behind the laughter. The emptiness behind the fear. The silence that sat with you as a child long before anyone gave you a name. And now it's no longer in the background. It is the ground, the base, the sky. You thought the world was out there and you were in here, but it was all in the same field, the same space, appearing, disappearing, changing, flowing, and none of it touched what you are, what you truly are. Not the image in the mirror, not the one holding the memory, not even the one trying to be free, because the one trying was also a dream, a ripple, a wave, believing it was separate from the sea. But there never was a separate wave, never was a separate self. There was only this ocean, always still, always open, always aware, and that ocean looked through your eyes, breathed through your lungs, walked your path not to become something, but to remember that it never had to. The journey wasn't real, the seeker wasn't real. The time between lost and found was just a flicker of dreaming in the mind of awareness. And now the flicker fades, the dream softens. You don't wake up into something new, you dissolve into something eternal, and all the questions fall away, not because they were answered, but because they no longer matter. Who am I? What am I? What is this? The one who asked is gone. The one who grasped is gone. The one who feared is gone. What remains is not a person, not a name, not a story, just presence, just space, just clarity without form. And in that clarity, everything returns. The body, the voice, the world. But none of it sticks anymore. None of it grips. It passes through you like wind through an open window. It rises and you smile. It fades and you don't chase. The sky doesn't mourn the clouds. The sun doesn't cling to its rays. And now, neither do you. You've remembered the oldest thing, the thing before the beginning, the space that was never born and never ends, the one that watched your first breath, the one that will watch your last, the one that doesn't sleep, doesn't break, doesn't leave. It was never waiting. It was never far. It was never outside you. You just looked for it as if it was something else, as if awakening was something to gain, something to earn. But it was always here, closer than thought, closer than breath, closer than I. And now that you know that, the mind may still speak, but you don't confuse yourself with its voice. The world may still shift, but you no longer believe you're moving. You are the stillness beneath every movement, the canvas under every painting, the silence under every song, and in that silence there is no fear, no grasping, no resistance, just this, just now, just being. And even the word being fades, because what you are has no opposite, no edge, no shape, no second. It is everything, and it is nothing, and it is home, not a place to arrive, but the place you never left.